what we might do is uh, we can go ahead and get started, and then as so we wait for Anna. But what we really want to do is to talk about what would be in phase two, where I was really excited about, the heat map and all the other exciting parts, that we were going to be able to do on the dashboard, uh, you know, over and above just the accessibility of it. But the new identified things that we are going to be able to do were so exciting.
So how would you like us to
All
do
right.
this, Tony? We could certainly kind of walk through the proposal and answer any questions, or I mean, any way you want to do this sounds good to me.
I would like you to go ahead and walk through and just say, here's what, phase two will encompass. We have this now, and what we plan to do is go ahead and have all of these other options inside of that phase two. And then if Anna goes back, is able to be with us. And then at the end, what we'll do is then you can talk specifically about here's the energy dashboard, but we're committed to to make it accessible as best we can. Here's what we're going to do, and then Tom and Anna can go ahead and watch it later if Anna can't make it for us today.
Tony, you've shared the proposal with everyone who's here. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you guys
Yes.
have all had a chance to look at it?
Yes, but what you showed me in our meeting together, John, was so much better as you showed the screenshots, you showed the ability. I read it, but it was just so more impactful as you presented it to me. So I'd like you to go ahead and just, present all of those things that we're going to be able to do and the screenshots that you showed, stuff like that.
Okay. Unfortunately, I'm not totally remembering exactly what I showed you, but what I'll do is I'll walk through the proposal because I just can't remember what
Okay.
all we did. But I'm
All
gonna
right.
let's see. Because I think maybe I showed you a little bit of what was on sort of like let's see. Let me just open TPS because that's probably a good thing. That's probably a good thing to have on in the background. So I'll walk through this and maybe I'll pop around a little bit. But obviously the key thing is for you guys to ask questions. I'm gonna literally share the proposal right now because it has a lot of it has a lot of the stuff in it. And then we can flip to real examples of that. But like I say, I'm very happy to have you guys, you know, stop me. And I am hoping Anna will show up, but I do want to preface what I say even before Anna makes it with just that we really are enthusiastic about the opportunity to make everything we do more accessible to people with disabilities online. And since we had our first discussion with Tom and Anna about this, we've had several internal discussions within, long internal discussions, several hours of discussion about, how are we going to, revise our software so that it is more accessible to people with disabilities. Online software in particular, obviously digital signage, you're pretty limited in terms of what you can do because you're assuming people have visual abilities with digital signage. But for the material we present on the web, and we want to make this as accessible as it can be while still retaining, some of what you hired us for, which is, I think, the animations, that sort of thing. And I think we can do it. We've had a lot of internal discussions. Peter Jones is with us here today as a member of the Community Hub team. He's our quality assurance person for Community Hub. And we have assigned Peter, and he's welcomed the task of, developing expertise in WCAG 2.2 requirements. We've all reviewed those requirements. We've gone over them with Peter, and we're a small company. We've got eight people. So we have somewhat limited capacities to pour all of our attention into this, but we're committed to making this work, and we want to work with you to make it work, because not only is it something you're saying is important to you, but it's important to us. So I just want to make that really clear at the outset. And we know we don't have all the expertise we need right now, but we're committed to really revising our software from the bottom up so that it's more accessible, particularly, again, the web accessible content, which is where I think people with different abilities are going to be accessing content. So making that so that it does achieve a lot of those goals. So I just want to say that we had proposed in the scope of our work to accomplish, 6 major goals. Where the heck is this the right thing I want here? No, this is totally the wrong proposal, which is why it's not looking right here. Hold on, bear with me. I didn't know quite what we were doing here. Yeah, okay, this is the right one.
Sorry, John.
Yeah, I was looking at that and saying, this is the wrong
No,
proposal.
but I really appreciate your dedication to that. I may be wrong, because I knew one of them, either Tom or Anna, wasn't going to be able to make it, but one of them was. Maybe it was Tom, and then now Tom said that he couldn't make it because of the family emergency. So we may not have them, and I really appreciate all of us recording this so that they can see it. And most importantly, thank you very much for your commitment and doing the very best that you can, in order to make it accessible as well. So thank you.
Yeah, we are completely committed to doing that. So here are kind of, I would say, the 6 big pieces and parts of what we're proposing. And again, we're happy to get comments and revise these. But one is clearly the web integration. And for the web integration, we're really proposing to do 2 different components of this. One is this Data Explorer dashboard, which is something where anyone viewing it can dive much deeper into the data and explore all of the different data in different time scales. Just as an example of that, let's see if you guys are looking at just the text of the proposal right now. Is that correct? Just want to make sure it switches appropriately. Are you now looking at a dashboard? Something? Are you looking at graphs?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. This is just sort of an example of a dashboard that we're in the process of developing for Toledo Public Schools. And it gives you an example of sort of this greater level of interactivity where you can look, and they have much more limited data than you guys do, but where you can, well, let's start at the top again. You can choose different buildings from this. So you could choose all of the buildings you folks have. You can look at that. You can choose different time scales for data. So looking at it over whatever time interval you'd like to look at that data over. And once you have a graph loaded, you can also export that data if you want to look at it. And this is something that Tom was saying, we had showed this website to Tom and he'd said, yeah, I think this is actually much closer to what would be workable. And, we'd always intended to build this out for Bothell as well, but where, you can look at, oops, I don't know why that's popping up. You can look at it in these different forms. And from an accessibility standpoint, one of the things that WCAG makes clear is that sometimes motion is problematic for certain people. So we would insert a button here which would allow you to stop the motion of the animated characters if you wish to do that, so that they wouldn't necessarily be moving if you didn't want them to be moving, but still with a thought that the default is that this is impactful to have this response of the character. And so we would leave it on by default, but you could simply do a click to stop it from exhibiting its motion. But again, we would build out a whole set of data visualizations that we've developed and are continuing to develop. So this is an example of sort of heat map analysis of energy use in the schools compared to outdoor temperature. So you can see those relationships between things. So point is,
John,
yes.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go back up. One thing that, let's scroll back up to the first one. Right. Keep
Up
going,
to the
keep going.
fish or the,
Yeah, right there.
yeah.
Right there. You and I had talked about where I wanted to go ahead and be able to go ahead and compare buildings,
Right.
all of our buildings, and then have them normalized. And
Right.
you had said that you could do that.
Right. Definitely.
Also, so that so Shahrazad, when you're comparing UW2 to UW1, UW2 is much smaller, and UW1 would look really, really like a big hog. But if you did it and you normalize those on a per square foot basis, or therms per square foot, or kilowatts per square foot, then what happens is that then they're more equalized.
Right.
Yes, sometimes like Discovery Hall is going to use more energy because of the labs, but then we could go ahead and try to explain that. So that was one thing that John had said he would do, as well as John and I talked about, a Monday through Thursday, is going to be a lot higher with our electricity and everything else, because our students are there during those times. And then also trying to compare, I don't want to compare one day to another, because it may be comparing Thursday to Friday, and then Friday it's very, very dead during that time. But what about Thursday of last week compared to Thursday of this week? And that was where John was saying, yes, you're going to be able to go ahead and compare days of the week in comparison, which was really great. So
yeah, let me just say a little
that's,
bit. Let me just say a little bit more about that algorithm, Tony, which we kind of do on the back end. So right now, these particular data are standardized so that weekday data is compared to weekday data, and weekend data is compared to weekend data. So you can see that the Saturday and Sunday here are the typical use is low on them because it's typically low. But we can on the back end, this typical use algorithm. We have a variety of approaches we can take to that based on discussions with you. So for instance, if a classroom is, if a certain building is scheduled so it gets used differently on Monday, Wednesday, Friday than it does on Tuesday, Thursday, we can compare Monday, Wednesday, Friday to other Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday to other Tuesday, Thursday, weekends to weekends, but we can also compare individual weekdays. The only disadvantage of comparing each Mondays only to Mondays is you have to go back further in time to do the comparison. So if you can group days, it's a little bit nicer because you don't have to go as far back in time to get comparative data. But we can and will configure this exactly how you guys want it in terms of how we're expressing typical data. So if you guys say, hey, Monday, Wednesday is one way, Tuesday, Thursday is another way, and Friday is another way, that's fine. We can just set it up so that that's the comparison group that's used for any of that. It's all Gaurav and team make all of this possible. It's just a checkbox for us.
Wonderful.
We have a sort of a schedule. We can say what days are compared with what days are used as for our baseline, but we do need to go back in time to compare them. So again, if you choose one day, you basically have to go back 5 weeks to get a comparison set.
Well,
whereas
the bottom line is it's going to go ahead and be so much easier to go ahead and compare and contrast. So I really appreciated that.
And there will be another selector. There'll be another selector up here, as you're saying, Tony, which will allow you to choose your comparison, because the comparisons that make sense for a given analysis are different. So for instance, we have both square footage for your buildings, but we also have occupancy. So you will be able to choose if you're comparing, if you have a comparative graph, you'll be able to choose, do you want to compare per square foot, or do you want to compare per person, per occupant in the building? So that'll be a user choice within that. Yes.
All right. So let's go down to the heat map. And I'm not sure, how many of you, so take a look at this heat map here. If you look at the red, and that's where we're using, if this was our heat map, this is where the red is where we're using the most of our electricity. But you look at between 6 and 8, there's a couple red dots there. We would have, and we would try to say, this is where what Tammy uses. Tammy will see and be very happy of having the red right in the center. They say, okay, school opens at 6 or 7 o'clock, and most of our stuff is done by 4. But what are those 2 red boxes there? Then they'll be able to drill down and try to find out if there's any issues with our systems where things may be on that shouldn't be on. So having the heat map is very, very good for us to look for any other savings. And I was very pleased when John showed me that the heat map would be back in. So, and then you take a look at this other one down here at the bottom, and it says total water, and you see the red is everywhere. And I'm glad that one isn't mine, but you'd have to try to investigate to see if these times when the draw of water, in the red is really where you want it. How efficient is it? And you can see on the upper one, the heat map is where it's all green, that's all low electricity use. So we would be able to go ahead and analyze, just with this heat map, which is very, very easy and easily understandable, so that then Tammy can go in and drill down and see if we have a leak somewhere, if we have air conditioning systems that are on or something that's on that shouldn't be on. And then there's other times you say, yeah, that one's red, and I know why. So I appreciated that, John. So thank you.
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't seen heat maps before, they might look initially pretty scary, but the thing to understand about them is each row is a day of the year and each column is an hour of the day. And so that, as Tony's saying, the color of a box is basically telling you whether that hour is higher or lower than normal. And it's, there's a scale at the top that tells you specifically what that is in terms of kilowatts or gallons per hour. But it does give you this, it's, one of many data visualization tools that, basically tells you stories about how the building is being used or not used. And this orange box over here at 2 a.m. is clearly something to think about. And, you get really different patterns in different buildings depending on how the building is used. But I think this one has a lot to do with management of the building as far as janitorial staff, but why it's using a lot in the middle of the night, it is a good question. And these are the kinds of things that are really useful when we get to classroom integration and talking about how this could be used as a tool for STEM learning in the classroom. We've had a lot of, leaks identified, problems with equipment identified by students in classrooms who, identify and then sort of pursue anomalous behavior and raise that, raise that to the attention of facilities people. We've, just this last year, we had a leak in our high school, and the local high school identified that, it was 58,000 gallons of water they were leaking. Actually, it's about 27,000 gallons of water per week being leaked because of a broken solenoid in a dishwashing machine that was just bleeding water continuously. And it was the students who identified that problem last spring, and we got it patched and fixed and that sort of thing. So it does give you kind of an example of like that interface between learning in the classroom and data interpretation. This particular, this is stacking the energy use of different schools. Again, this is not Bothell, but very easy for us to build dashboards like this for Bothell. So that sort of building that data explorer dashboard is really key to what we want to do. And as mentioned, we definitely want that to be maximally accessible to the broadest possible group of users of different abilities, and we've
All right,
written quite a bit about how we're going to
John,
make that happen. Yes.
yeah, Sharzad has their hand up.
Oh, sorry, I can't see. You guys just have to say stuff. Go ahead,
Okay,
Shirzad.
good to know that. Thanks, Tony. A question about the heat map that we were just looking at, and I know we're missing
Yeah.
our accessibility folks on the team here today, but I wanted to ask if you can add a kind of a toggle button to enable a colorblind friendly color palette for these, because I know especially
Absolutely.
with green red that can be an issue.
Absolutely. Yes. That we will do that. We'll make this available in a couple of different spectra, ranging from just white to black scale. So you have the same thing with color free, but we can also make it so that people can choose their color spectrum. The sort of history of why we chose yellow to red, even though it does sort of is a real problem for people who are colorblind, is because of stop signs. And that being sort of intuitive to people, that sort of green to red as, green, yellow, red as stop sign, and then sort of some intermediate colors as well. That's sort of the history of why we chose to use that, but we are absolutely committed here and in other things to use a combination of both gradients of, and personally, I feel like choices are good. So people can actually toggle their choice of spectrum so that, different people can look at, someone might want to look at it this way, someone might want to look at it a different way. So giving the user the maximum number of choices so that they can choose, they can optimize their view for themselves. And if in fact they're completely, sight impaired, they can download data and process it in a different program really easily so that again, this too would have that little, download button, and you would be able to toggle through things and understand what you're quote looking at, even if you're sight impaired. But yes, absolutely, we will have other spectra. But there's the question of, do you want to stick with this as a default spectra or not? And we're open to that. If Bothell said, no, we want this as a default spectra, that's fine. We can do that. We can configure it with whatever you guys want as far as what the default is.
And
No, that sounds
Sharzad,
great.
Sharzad, certainly as I am not here and retire, it's certainly going to be up to you and Nicole and others to make a decision. But I really like, because I like that the colors that are here, and then having the option to choose other colors. I think for the majority of the sighted individuals, this is really easy to understand this way. So if we could start with everything, like this, and then they have an option to go ahead and go to gradients or black and white, certainly. But anyway, it'll be up to you and, up to the team to decide how you want it displayed on the dashboard itself. So.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful to know, and I'd be curious to hear what Anna and Tom would have to say. But yeah, definitely great to hear
Yeah.
you're already thinking of incorporating the toggle for different colors. Thank
Yeah, and
you.
we're happy to configure it however you guys want to. We do know that you guys, going back to sort of the animated characters and stuff, we know that that was a big reason why we were chosen. So, our preference would be to have them by default exhibit behavior, but have you able to turn off the behavior, as opposed to have them off by default and turn them on. But again, you guys are in the driver's seat and can decide, which of those makes sense. So that's fine. So we are very excited about curricular integration, working with teachers, faculty members, to figure that out. Through that short brainstorm we had, it seemed like there was some ideas about different programs, within your school that would make sense, where that might make sense, obviously, in environmentally focused courses, but also potentially in business, I think, with some of the ideas that came up on that in terms of curricular integration. We know that you guys want a citywide dashboard, so a version of that. So we have some ideas on campus-wide dashboard. This is an example where your input would be really crucial to help us get the graphics right on that, but we do include that in what we propose to do, and I'll show that in a second. One thing that, you know, this idea that was discussed in that brainstorming session as well, of using the platform as a means of communicating the broad range of sustainability related activities occurring on campus. Our Community Voices software, which we have not implemented on your campus at all yet, does provide a great way to do that. Shirazad, I think that would actually, that you'd be really key in that, maybe some faculty being really key in providing us with ideas on what the range of messaging should be on that. And I think I'm going to slide down again. I hadn't really known how we were going to do this, but I just want to show some examples of some of this. This is an example of a data visualization, which I didn't show you for TPS, but where you would be able to choose exactly the standardization you want in these selector boxes. So if you want to change this to per square foot or per person, that would be, you know, something you could choose in these, that the user of the website would be able to just alter and you know, however they wanted to look at it, that would be sort of a continuous choice. This next one is an example of what we call portfolio drift. It's really just a different way of expressing this kind of bar graph data, but it's one that a lot of people find really useful, where the size of a box has to do with how much resources it's using over whatever time period you've selected. In this case, a week is selected. And then the color of the box tells you how that building is doing relative to how it normally does. So it's referencing typical use. And so red means it's using a lot more of the stuff than other things. Green means it's using a lot less. And then size means is relative to the other building. So in this case, South is using South, Firelands, Con, North. They're using a lot more electricity than the other ones, but North and Firelands are using less electricity than they normally do. So you're getting both of that comparison among buildings and internal comparison within buildings, within the visualization. Again, all of these, I know from lots of experience, are really great in the classroom for helping people to understand, you know, resource flows and consumption. This is sort of our initial mock-up of which this is a functional mock-up. It works, but it's not integrated into your website yet. So through these discussions with Tom, Anna, others, you know, making sure that the way we construct this meets your goals as well as WCAG 2.2 standards is really central to what we've been talking about on our end. And so there's a lot of text in here on how we want to do that. And then there's an appendix on that. You know, as I say, we would really love to work with you on figuring out how do we better integrate everything we're doing into sort of like the classroom learning, as well as what people might see on screens as they walk by. Here's the citywide versions, different versions of citywide dashboards for a couple different cities that we've developed. And I know that was one of the things that Tony was initially so excited about. You know, we would want to work with you to figure out what would that look like most appropriately for UW Bothell. You know, it probably wouldn't be a plan view like this, but what would that look like? And that, I think, would occur as a result of sort of design charrettes and you know, Maddie on our end would probably play a key role in sort of mocking that up and getting us to a point where you guys were comfortable. But the idea basically would be to develop something like our like our citywide dashboards, where we have aggregate campus-wide consumption, environmental conditions displayed on the right-hand side and animated within the within this display here. So that's one of the things we're proposing to do and are excited to do with you guys. And it would be a design process. And then the community voices, like I say, this is something we use in most of our other installations, where it combines images and words. It's a software service we basically host, and we'd help work with you to, you know, pull out the content that speaks to kind of individual level sustainability initiatives, resource conservation initiatives on your campus, and tell it as little micro stories, which is what these do. Just for an example, in the city of Oberlin, we have hundreds, maybe even thousands of pieces of content that get randomly displayed on screen. So you're always seeing new content. We're always developing new content for this. This actually happens to be a neighborhood where we have a dashboard in inner city Cleveland. And so all of the content in their community voices is drawn from their particular neighborhood. This is actually lower here is content from the city of Oberlin, but we'd love to work with you to sort of, tell the micro stories of what's going on your campus through those. And we do still have some additional data that still needs to be integrated within your system. That's it's not a problem on our end. It's a problem with your integrations. But I think we're getting closer to having natural gas working in your metering system. Anyway, Tony, is there something else you wanted me to say?
No, I think that between Courtney and Tammy, probably need to go ahead and try to verify what's being collected and what isn't. As far as I know, all of the gas should be being collected, but if maybe Courtney can help out and try to get an update on what isn't, and then what do we still need to go ahead and do. I know on my internet side, my south garage solar was disconnected, but Tammy said she's still receiving it through JCI, which is feeding over to you. So that is a question that I think we need to go ahead and get some updates on, John. And then not knowing, if Mo wants to go ahead and have Emily involved, but that's what needs to happen.
Tony, I'll check with Tammy next
anxious.
week. The gas data should be pushing through finally. It should be up to date and sending to you guys. So I'll check with Tammy and Emily next week and see what the holdup might be.
Yeah, I don't think any of that data is being pushed to us right now. Yeah, Gaurav, do you know have you seen any new data coming in?
No, last time I checked, I don't think we're receiving the gas variables.
Okay. All right. Well, we certainly are committed to go ahead and provide those connections. And really the first phase was all of that organization of bringing all those things in. So thank you very much for everybody's patience on that. This phase 2 was just all of the great, exciting things that I was really envisioning to go ahead and have in an energy dashboard. I did talk to Anna a little bit about, asking if we could go ahead and, on the internet, on the website, have our dashboard doing, the maximum things. They'd be colored. Our little fish would be swimming and hopefully not swimming sideways because we're using lots of water. And then our squirrel would be smiling, as we're using less and less electricity. And then the person that is operating, looking at the website, would have a choice to tone things down, to turn things off. But what my default, I was asking Anna to consider, is that if we could have everything, looking colorful and animated, and then you have a choice to turn it off. So she said that she would talk to Dr. John and see. I think there was some compromise that she wanted to do, and I said that was great as long as we could talk about it. But I did tell her of the community hub having the utmost, really trying to do the best that they can for our project. So
Yeah, just to reiterate,
right.
we want it to be accessible to everyone. That's really important to us. That's not sort of a secondary for us. But we also don't
Right.
want to compromise the visuals for people for people who want the animations. But we're confident we can figure it out with you guys. What
Yeah.
what's going to work best for you in different contexts. So.
And thank you, Peter, for wanting to go ahead and work really hard focusing on that accessibility portion.
I'm really glad I could put in work into that and help out.
Thank you. So one thing, Therese, I think you were we had talked about the Google, it was like a Google storyboard or whatever. And if we ever moved from Google.
Hosting the Google presentations, we are happy to continue hosting those. I think that was one of the questions, and the simple answer is if you guys like take Google off your campus, we would actually, in some ways, it makes more sense for us to host them. So, but yeah, we are hosting them, and we will continue to host them. So that's not an issue.
Great. Any other questions or anything that for anybody else? Martin? No? Mo, do you have any questions or clarifications?
I think the accessibility item, I appreciate John and his team looking into that and supporting, and the feedback we've gotten from UW Bothell has been great. I have not studied the proposal fully, and I don't know if what John, your team is researching around accessibility, if your approach could be summarized in a document just so that engagement continues to proceed forward with the UW Bothell's team. I think that'd be helpful, because obviously anything we do moving forward has to be aligned there. So I don't know, there are some things when they're scrolling through screens, it's like, okay, could we use different colors? Like, yes, great. We will, work on that. And we have the confidence that your team will work on these items for us, but it'd be great if some of the initiatives, knowing your vision for where this dashboard is going, could start being documented, even if it's a shared file or something. That way we understand what your team is researching, and the UW accessibility team continues to give us guidance or feel comfortable with the direction that your team is going towards.
I think that's in Appendix 1 of this, which focuses on WCAG and like our discussions of exactly what we're going to do. If that's not adequate, I mean, the Appendix 1 is focused exclusively on accessibility. We tried to write some into the body of the proposal itself, but it seemed like it made sense to sort of move it out to walk. So in Appendix 1, what we do is we walk through WCAG guidelines that we feel apply to us, and based on the discussions with Tom, and then based on reviewing WCAG 2.2 guidelines, and then Peter has sort of identified, here's all the places where I think there's something specifically related to the software we're providing you, and here's what we plan to do. And much of that is not yet implemented, so we because we didn't know we were going to do this. But like I say, we're happy to do all the implementation that we've described in there. And some of it is really is revising the software at its base level. Like one of the things that Tom made clear to us is the need to have a web accessible version that you can tab through rather than mousing through to make it accessible to people. And that's actually quite a bit of coding on our end, but we are committed to doing that to make it work. So it's at that level where we're really sort of recoding some of stuff pretty low down in our code to make it so that it does achieve that ability for people to sort of tab through it. And there's a lot of work because the pop-ups can't function the way they were functioning. I don't know, Gaurav, if you or Peter want to say anything about it, but it's actually quite deep. It's not, there were some comments about overlay. It's not an overlay. It's a rebuild of our software, really. Gaurav, you want to say anything about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's fun to work on and it's challenging, but I agree with John that it's definitely forcing us to rethink a lot of things.
I
Well,
think
the great thing, yeah, okay. I'm saying the great thing about that is that Community Hub, you know, can really brag about how accessible your screens are, you know, and then, you know, as Tom was saying, all of the city, county, state ones are ones that need to comply as well. So it is a really great thing to go ahead and do this because you can brag about it as well. But what I want to get back to what Mo was saying and where Shahrazad was concerned and making sure that the colors were be able to go ahead and change. Is that in Appendix 1? And then as we go ahead and we have this input, then we say, great, it's right here inside of Appendix 1, where Mo is saying, you know, we can all agree, but let's go ahead and put it in writing. And if it's in there, then you just need to point at it, John.
So just so I'm clear, what do we, is there a specific revision? I mean, we are happy, as I said earlier, Tony, to revise the proposal in any way you guys want us to revise it.
Right.
We
No.
what exactly should we do?
All right, here's what Shahrazad asked about the red, green on the heat map. You had said that's no problem. We can go ahead and change it to black and white and put a gradient, you know, as an option. If that is already in Appendix 1, then you just need to point at it because it's already written down. If it's not, then Mo is asking, let's go ahead and put that in Appendix 1 in order to go ahead and make sure that we all have that documentation that we were going to do that. Is that correct, Mo?
Yes. And I just want to add to that. You know, it's one of the feedback that Tom gave us, and these are not his exact words, but what I recall from that discussion, you know, he said, we at UW will give you guidance around accessibility that we'd like to see happen. But it's back on, you know, the dashboard provider to meet the accessibility. Like they don't want to be the jurisdiction that is trying to figure out, have you met accessibility requirements or not? So their feedback to us is, you know, John and his team, and I know you have folks on your team now taking an initiative to study that further, but they gave guidance around accessibility for the dashboard on their campus. They want your team to take that guidance, and whether you work on it alone or you have consultants that know accessibility come back and say, yes, we reviewed it, we think you're meeting those accessibility. That's just a more it's a stronger message for us to go back to UW and say, here, you know, that we've done a lot of work around accessibility and we're confident in what we're providing, because they don't want to be the ones that are you know, doing the final check if we met accessibility requirements.
And I think you're doing that with Peter, you know, pulling all of that knowledge back and saying, this is what we need to go ahead and change. So, so I do appreciate that. And Martin, go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, just to echo what Mo said, and I apologize. I'm not sure exactly what was said on the last call, but I just know that in general, you know, I think what the institution is looking for is that some entity says, yes, I've been trained on this, and yes, I have reviewed it, and it meets the expectations of ADA accessibility, if I recall correctly. And I just, yeah.
Right, right.
That was just my only
And,
point.
I
Don't get me
see-
wrong, I'm not an expert, sorry.
Yeah, and I think that credentialed accreditation is the the accessibility standards. John, bring that back up. The verbiage that you saw, and I'm sorry I didn't see that. Where you cited it.
That's good. What I wanted to point out is that throughout the proposal, we did try to highlight, particular changes. I'm not doing, for some reason, my mouse doesn't want to highlight this, but you can see where I am here. Note that we will provide options for viewing that rely on shading or hatching patterns as an alternative to meet WCAG 2.2 guidelines. So some of this is within the proposal when we're showing you actual ones, and then we sort of do a review of the specific ones. But I do want to point out that there is some ambiguity here, and we're also in some new territory, in the sense that WCAG would say you should provide text that interprets graphs. Well, I don't think that they're dealing with real-time data displays where no one has ever seen the graph before. So we can't interpret a graph because because you're seeing the data in that particular format for the first time. So it's not an absolutely clear-cut situation here. And at the same time, too, we're getting a very clear signal. We've always gotten a clear signal from Tony that part of the reason he hired us is because he likes the animations and that sort of stuff. Having it default so that it's got the animations and the colors might not be optimized for WCAG 2.2. So I'm just saying there's judgments. It's not as clear cut as, having spent some time at this now, it's not 100% clear cut.
Totally.
Yeah. So it's not like we can say we'll run it by someone who'll put some stamp on it and say you met the requirements. I don't think that's a thing, actually.
Yeah.
Got it.
I really think that
I may be incorrect, sorry.
Yeah, I really think that, it is really trying to do your very best at that. And you're right. If there was a saying that we had and or some kind of thing that you made it into text, if it was something that was still and didn't change for each person, I can certainly respect that. So that's what you're talking about, John.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
And
yeah.
so
All right.
it's going to be, I don't know that we're going to achieve perfection, but I can tell you that we at Community Hub are committed to having the broadest possible group able to access it, to meeting WCAG, AAA standards where we can, and minimally A standards. So we're committed to that, but I think, it's not going to be perfect in the sense that I don't think it's possible to be perfect.
Yeah. All right. And to answer Martin's, the accredited agency would be that document that they're working from, the 2.2. So.
And they are
All right,
guidelines. I'll point that out too. I mean, they recognize it's not perfection either.
So is there anything else? Any other questions? Okay, well, I wanted to thank you all for all you've done and all of that great hard work. I'll be handing this off to Nicole and working with Mo to go ahead and help us with that. And then, I hope to go ahead and see a beautiful dashboard. And if we can't get there, I think we can, just to make it so much nicer. So thank you.
See how high you can go in that order.
We're super excited to work with you.
All right. Thank you very much. And everybody else, happy holidays.
You too.
Thank you, Tony.
Everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Turn it. Yeah.
Thank you.